Good morning.
And good morning to you. So Nathan asked me to preach this weekend, and to be honest, I wasn't really feeling it. At the back of my mind, I have this idea that when I preach, I should have some profound spiritual insight to share with everybody, or perhaps an inspiring story of overcoming obstacles, or, I don't know, a foolproof technique from the Bible for achieving your goals or something. And today, I'm not really feeling any of those things. To be honest, I'm tired. I'm anxious. I've just moved house. The background you see here is the one clean corner in my entire house. If we were to turn the camera around, you would see piles of cardboard boxes and other junk everywhere. And apparently, we're in the middle of a global pandemic as well.
Just for fun.
Right? So instead of a carefully prepared monologue, I thought today we'd do something different. I thought I'd just invite you to a quick conversation around the breakfast table. So with me is Heather Morgan. Hello, Heather.
Hello.
Heather is many things. Heather is a seminarian now. Congratulations.
Thank you. That starts in like 2 weeks, so we'll see how that goes.
Heather is an elder at Vox. She's a life coach. She's a high-risk doula. She's a parent. She's a disability advocate, an all-around amazing human being, and someone who I somehow convinced to marry me many years ago. So good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. That puts me in your bubble, so this is safe.
It does. So do you feel like doing a podcast?
Sure.
I thought if this became a regular thing, we could call it the Voxcast.
That seems like what we would call it.
So, Heather, I've been told that good sermons should have, and good stories should have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Uh-huh.
But right now, I feel like everything in life is sort of stuck in the middle. Have you ever had that feeling?
Stuck in the middle with you.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Maybe we know where we came from. We have no idea where we're going. I don't really even know what plans for the future. Do you remember when we used to make plans?
Plans.
Yeah?
Plans.
Do you remember plans?
Oh, yes. I remember plans.
Yeah, when we would have...
That was very 2019, wasn't it?
Plans were very 2019,
Yeah.
I feel. Yes,
Yeah.
we used to have some goal in the future of that thing we were going to achieve.
There were like dates attached to them?
Yeah, people we were going to do it with.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. I remember.
Yeah, I don't feel like we can really do plans anymore.
No.
I don't feel like we have conclusions and ends. I feel very much like I'm just living, like in the middle of a story that I don't know what the end is going to be. I don't know when this pandemic is going to be over. I don't know how long our lives are going to be disrupted like this. And so I've been thinking a lot about this phrase, living in the middle. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'd love to talk to you, because I feel like you might have some experience of living in the middle of things.
It's possible.
Have you ever had an experience of not knowing how things are going to turn out, of not having like a clear endpoint in mind?
Yeah, once or twice.
Do you want to maybe tell me something about that? I noticed, for example, you're in a wheelchair.
Yes. So about 4 years ago now, one evening I was just in the middle of brushing my teeth and my legs started wobbling underneath of me. Like, for no reason. I was like, that's kind of weird. I don't love that. And so, I tried to get it to stop and it kind of didn't stop. So I went to bed and then that stopped it for that night. And then it started happening earlier and earlier and earlier in the day until one day I just couldn't get up in the morning without it happening. And that was the beginning of something which we still don't know what it is. We don't know why I'm in a wheelchair. We don't know why I require all of the expensive things that I have.
And very often when people get sick, and this is certainly my expectation at the time, is you get sick, you go to a doctor.
Yes.
They tell you what's wrong with you. Perhaps they run some tests.
They do.
They prescribe certain treatments, perhaps some medication, perhaps some surgery.
Okay.
There's a period of recuperation afterwards, and you get on with your life.
Yeah. Yeah, not you call them continuously for months and finally show up in the ER because nothing else is working, and they run a bunch of tests and tell you they're all normal, but they'll keep you in the ways to run some more tests, and then they tell you what it is, and they send you off for treatment, and it makes it worse, and so they send you home and forget about you.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, more or less.
So you don't actually know the name of the condition you have.
No.
You don't know what the prognosis is.
No.
You don't know what the treatment plan might be.
Treatment.
No, there isn't a treatment
No.
plan. They've tried a whole bunch of things.
Yep.
None of them have been particularly impactful.
I've tried a couple of things that have helped,
Well, that's good.
but not mostly coming from doctors.
But this isn't a story that has a clearly defined end. You don't know that, I'm in a 20 chapter novel, and when I get to chapter 20, everything will be fine.
No.
No, you're kind of in the middle of things.
Yeah.
And we were talking the other day about stories. We like it when stories have neat endings, ones that tie up all the loose ends. But we were talking about this idea that in the Bible, so often the people in the stories have no idea of how their story is going to turn out.
Yeah, exactly. There's all sorts of examples of that.
They don't get to flip to the back of the book and figure out who wins and who loses.
No.
And you were telling me about one particular story.
Yeah, there's this story where, is it Elisha or Elijah?
Yes.
Elijah, thank you. Where Elijah is fleeing, he's running away, there's a famine, he needs somewhere to crash, and so he comes across this house, and there's this woman, and she and her son are, it's just her, she's a widow, and she and her son are dying of starvation, and she says, I've just got this wheat and this flour and this oil,
Right.
and I'm going to make the last possible loaf of bread with it, and then we're going to curl up and die.
Right. Should we read that story out?
We should.
So this is in 1 Kings, and the story goes like this. It's talking about the prophet Elijah. So sometime later the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. And then the word of the Lord came to him. Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. So he went to Zarephath. When he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, Would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink? As she was going to get it, he called, And bring me please a piece of bread. As surely as the Lord your God lives, she replied, I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I'm gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. It's dark, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely like she's not just in the middle. She's like pretty darn sure she is at the end.
Right? And then what happens? Elijah said to her, Don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first, make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me, and then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land. She went away and did as Elijah told her. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. It's an odd story, isn't it?
It is an odd story, and the thing that we can miss in the middle of this very small vignette is that it's an odd story in the midst of a whole country's odd story.
Right.
It's not just this woman and her son who are going hungry. It's not just this woman and her son who are experiencing a drought in the land. The entire country
Is in a crisis.
Is in a crisis.
Yes.
The entire country is dealing with economic upheaval. The entire country doesn't know where their next meal is going to come from.
Right.
And this is just one person's story in the middle of the entire country story.
Right. They don't know where the next meal's coming from, and they certainly don't know how long this situation is going to last.
No. They can't even guess that it'll be 18 to 24 months.
Right. Yeah, they're just hoping to make it through the day, aren't they?
Yeah.
And so in this face of this story, in this situation, what is it they do every day?
Pretty sure she gets up, she goes and she gathers some sticks, and she goes to the well, and she tries to get some water, and then she goes home and she makes her loaf of bread.
And what does she do the day after that?
Pretty sure she gets up and goes and gathers her sticks and goes to the well and hopes to find some water, and goes home and tries to bake her family a loaf of bread.
And the next day,
Yeah.
she does pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, it just
doesn't
keeps going, right?
It just keeps going.
She's right in the middle of it.
Yes.
That's why this is the story I thought of when we were brainstorming ideas earlier, is because this story is all about just being in the middle. There's nothing particularly exciting about it. There's no like sudden miraculous moment where she goes from having like a jar of flour that has a little bit of flour on the bottom and a jug of oil with a little bit of oil on the bottom, and then all of a sudden she has an entire storehouse of flour and oil. That's not what happens.
No, she doesn't get a windfall. She doesn't get ahead.
No.
She
It's
just has enough for today.
That every single day when she goes to try to get some flour out of the bottom of the jar, there's still flour there. And when she tries to get a little bit of oil out of the bottom of the jug, there's still oil there.
And do you think she spends a lot of time thinking about like the next week or the next month or the next year?
I don't know what she thinks.
Right.
I know that she doesn't get to know.
Right.
There's a difference.
Yes.
Sometimes, some of us, we're the type of people that like to think every single day and ruminate and plan and try to, control. And you
I did.
enjoyed that cup of coffee, didn't you? That's
Very
okay.
good. That's my morning latte.
Yeah, everybody
that
gets
to get going.
everybody gets a good coffee. But whether you're the type to ruminate and think about all those things every single day, or whether you're just the type to do the next right thing, it doesn't really matter in a situation like this, because there is nothing she can do to control the outcome of this situation. She just doesn't get to know.
Right? Yeah, I was thinking about this. I wonder whether Jesus has this story in mind when he says that thing in Matthew chapter 6. There's a hint of it, isn't there? Don't worry about tomorrow, he says. It will take care of itself. You have enough to worry about today. Right? Which is very true in the story, I think. And I think very true for most of us right now.
Yeah. And like it's interesting. Like this widow has Elijah living with her.
Yes.
Elijah is the prophet bar none,
right?
Until
Yes.
Jesus shows up.
Yes.
Elijah is the one that people refer back to.
Yes.
Elijah is the one everyone wants Elijah to come back again. And in fact, like Jesus is sort of lumped a little bit
right.
in that
he's
same.
He's seen as a returned version of Elijah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so like the widow has Elijah living with her, and she still doesn't get to know how long will the famine last for? How long do I have to keep doing this? It doesn't say, well, after she fed him his first loaf of bread and his first cup of water, he sat down with her and explained that this was going to be a 3-long famine, and they were going to, play some cards and do some spiritual practices. And they were going to have to keep it a secret, but the plan was it was going to end on the 18th of Av in 3 years' time.
Right.
She didn't get that, even though she had Elijah staying with her.
Right.
And Jesus says this to his disciples: don't worry about tomorrow. Each day has enough worries of its own. They're walking with Jesus every day. Like physically walking through the fields and the roads and the towns with Jesus. And sometimes we think that if only Jesus came back, if only we had access to more something spiritual, then we would be okay. But this is Jesus's advice to his disciples as he is walking along the road with them a couple years before his death. This isn't like prep day
Right.
for the test, right? He does that towards the end. He starts to give them like warnings and advice and everything to help get them through his death and resurrection. But this is like way earlier. Jesus is still there. And they still need to know this.
Right. So Heather, you're someone who's had, as you say, you've had to let go of knowing what the end of the story is going to be like. You've had a certain amount of practice in this.
I'm getting there.
Yeah?
It's not easy.
It's not right, but I thought we could take maybe a few minutes and talk about some of the things that you've learned that help you with this process of living in the middle. Because we want to know what the end is going to be like. We want to know what the story is going to be like.
Oh my goodness,
when our
yes.
kids were young, we would get up every morning and we would tell them, this is the story of the day. We're going to get dressed. We're going to have breakfast. We're going to go to the store. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And all of us usually are calmer when we know kind of what to expect in life.
Yes.
But very often we don't get that. So as a family, we've tried to develop a few tools and also a few unique phrases, some ways of talking about this problem of living in the middle. And I think some of them have helped us. And I've just scribbled down a few of them that have come to mind, and I thought maybe we could take a few minutes to talk about some of those tools.
Sure.
So the other day you mentioned the idea of slowing.
Right. So
What's slowing to you?
slowing is a spiritual practice. There are books on like spiritual disciplines, things that help people to create space in their lives to be more connected to God spiritually. And there are all sorts of things on that list. When I grew up, I thought the list was read your Bible, pray every day. Turns out there's a lot more than that. I've got a book on my shelf that has like 100 different spiritual practices in it. And they're all little like 2-page explanations. So if anyone's interested in finding out more, send me a message and I will connect you up with that. But one of those practices is called slowing. And slowing just means almost exactly what it says. It's just slow down. Take the things that you're trying to do and give them a little bit more time. Put a little bit more margins in between things. And interestingly enough, the spiritual practice of slowing connects really well with the physical practice that one doctor actually gave me something useful one day. And that was called pacing. So pacing, again, is this idea of only going up just before the edge of your energy envelope.
Right.
And we have mental energy envelopes, we have emotional energy envelopes, we have physical energy envelopes. And a lot of us in North America especially struggle with this idea of trying to push the envelope, trying to break through the envelope. No
Right.
pain, no gain. You just have to really try harder and all of those things. And the practice of slowing says, no, I'm going to, on purpose, as a radical act of spiritual trust, do less.
So this reminds me, a few years ago in our neighborhood, a house caught fire. And very quickly the fire department came and started.
And it caught a lot on fire.
It caught a lot on fire. The house burnt down largely. Everybody got out. There weren't any injuries.
But like the houses on either side also started to catch on fire.
Yeah, it was a big thing. But the fire department turned up. There's a crisis, right? People turned up to deal with it. But what amazed me is they went through all that process. They pulled out the hoses. They got the water onto the fire. They checked it. They stopped it from spreading further into the neighborhood. And not one of them ran at any point in time. They walked the entire time. They had a job to do. They got on and did the job, but there was no panic. There was no stress. They weren't pushing themselves outside of their energy envelope.
Yeah.
They were making sure they did the job and they did it right.
Yeah.
There was a kind of a methodicalness to it.
Yeah. And the thing about staying under our lines, the thing about slowing or pacing is that it lowers our adrenaline,
Yes.
it lowers our anxiety, it lowers our physical stress, it increases our health physically, emotionally, relationally. We're less likely to snap and get irritable with each other when we've been slowing. And
We're taking ourselves out of that fight and flight phrase.
And we're less likely to injure ourselves.
Yes.
Physically, relationally, emotionally, all of those things.
Have you ever injured yourself when you've pushed your body too hard?
That's a trick question, and I don't know that I have to answer it in this context. I think I'm going to keep that to myself.
Okay, so let's move on because I wrote down a couple of other disciplines that have helped us. Another one is celebration.
Yes.
You mentioned this idea of celebrating every success.
Yeah, so the thing about The thing about the story that says we're going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end is that you tend to wait until you get to the end to celebrate.
Yes.
But what happens when you don't have an end?
Right.
And so then it's really tempting to just stop celebrating. So instead of not celebrating, what I tried to do was I tried to start celebrating every single little success. I have no idea what the end of this story looks like. I don't know how far off it is. I don't know whether it's even coming. I don't get to know those details. And so instead, I am trying really, really hard to celebrate each success along the way. And so when I got my new wheelchair, that was a cause for celebration. Let's go out and have breakfast. This was in pre-COVID days.
Oh, I remember breakfast. Remember when we used to be able to go out and
out to
eat,
restaurants
and eat with other people
without masks and stress and
I remember that.
Yeah. And then, with this house, when we started the process, especially, we had no idea how long it was going to take to finish it. And, a little bit not sure how long it's going to take to finish it now. So, but we try really hard to celebrate each success. This milestone got an ice cream out. This milestone, right. We went and sat by the beach and just sort of tried to breathe and take it in. Celebrating those successes, that's another spiritual discipline. And I'm discovering that maybe like the widow in our story, maybe she just started learning to celebrate each right. and every loaf of bread. It was a success. It was a miracle. Every single loaf of bread, as mundane as it was a miracle. So what are your everyday successes?
Right. And I realize we're getting through our time quickly here, so I think we're going to skip a couple of them. But I do want to talk about the 4 M's.
Yes.
So this was a tool that you came up with for me, especially over the last year. You noticed that sometimes I get a little stressed. Sometimes I get a little anxious. Sometimes I get a little all up in my head. Mm-hmm. And when this happens, you ask me this question. You say, Trevor, have you done your 4 M's? Mm-hmm. And this is part of the special language that we've created. So maybe just tell people, what are the 4 M's?
Meet, move, make, and meaning.
Meet.
Are the 4 moves.
Move, make, meaning.
Yeah, those are the 4 M's.
And what does that mean?
So meet with someone else. Yes. Connect to someone else. That's been really hard during pandemic times, but doesn't mean it's any less important.
Right.
Sometimes you get yourself all isolated and you're not even really talking to me or the kids, and it's just you stuck in your head, and then it gets bigger and bigger, and that's not so great. So that's meet.
Yes.
Go talk to someone.
Talk to someone. Go for a coffee, make a phone call, sit in the front step and have a socially distanced conversation with someone down at the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Move is the next one. We are physical beings, whether it's Trevor, who I know we all think he's like a superhuman movement genius, he kind of is, or me, who definitely, sometimes standing up is a little bit tricky for me. So like we've got the entire spectrum sitting here at this table, but movement for both of us is really important. I feel better when we go for a run, even though people look at me and I'm just sitting in that chair. I am working, I promise. But the movement actually helps my brain. It's been part of how I've healed. So move is the second one. Make is the third one. Make is create something.
Yes.
It's play the piano. It's do a decoupage. It's grow some grass seeds. Yeah, Trevor's been growing grass.
This is entirely new to me. I've never done gardening in my life before, but now we're in a house that has a backyard. It's been quite an incredible experience. It started off with dirt, and I don't know how to make grass happen, but we went to the store and we bought some grass seed and we plowed up the backyard and we put some grass seed down and poured lots of water on it, and eventually green stuff starts to come up through it. It's really quite something. It's startling. But yes, there's something very, very calming about the process, isn't there?
Yeah.
To go out every morning and put some more water down and see it's grown a tiny bit more since yesterday, and to see, yeah, something is happening, something is changing back there.
Yeah.
I have something to do with this. I can't make it go any faster than it's going. I can't really force it to happen.
No.
I can gently encourage it. I can nurture it. I can try and give it what it needs.
But it gives you hope.
It gives me hope.
For
Yes.
the possibility of things to change.
And it's very concrete and it's very tangible.
Yeah. And then the fourth one is meaning. And meaning just means that it's important to feel like we are contributing somehow to the
Yes.
world that we live in. When we start to feel like we have no option or opportunity to give back, to share, to connect, then we really struggle with this. And I think some people like inherently know this. I noticed right at the beginning of COVID that there were these groups that popped up in Barrie, like the Barrie Families Unite and Barrie Caremongers, and like very rapidly these groups filled up with people who really wanted to feel like they had some way of making a difference in the middle
Right,
of
yes.
what felt overwhelming. These were people who inherently knew that skill. The numbers were big, but they weren't the entirety of Barrie. So my guess is that while there are some people who inherently understand the need to create meaning in the middle of uncertain times, in the middle of life.
Right.
There are other people who maybe need reminded that meaning is important.
Yes.
And so are there some things that you've done that have helped with meaning? Because I think this was like the one we tacked on at the end, right?
Yeah, and I think in many ways this has been the hardest one for me. Like meeting with people, yeah, that kind of makes sense, and moving and making, like they're somewhat more concrete. Meaning is perhaps the more complex one. It's the one that comes out of the other three, I think. But yes, when I find that the thing I'm doing has some greater purpose, has some greater meaning, is connected to something that's in some way bigger than just myself and just my problems, then it starts to bring things into perspective. It starts to give me a sense of hope. It starts to give me a sense of purpose. And very often community is a place where that meaning is discovered, I think. Yeah.
Even doing something like a podcast.
Even doing something like a podcast. So I think we're going to wrap up our conversation there. So I'd like to just close with a benediction.
Okay.
So for all of you who feel like you're in the middle of a story with no clear ending, if the idea of having targets and goals and plans seems laughably optimistic, if simply getting to the end of the day feels like a struggle, may you have the joy of celebrating every small success. May you know the security of being rooted in loving community. May you have delight in your own body. May your anxiety be lessened as you move and walk and run and dance. May you be free to create, to think new thoughts, to tell new stories, to find new ways of living. May your life be rooted in purpose and meaning. And may grace and peace be with you all. Heather, thanks for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.